What's up guys, Justin here with the CGEssentials.com. So in today's video we're going to check out a tool that actually brings push-pull style functionality, kind of like SketchUp, to Blender. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. So if you've ever used SketchUp to create 3D models, you're probably familiar with the push-pull tool. It's basically a tool that allows you to take a surface like this face and you can push-pull it back, and then when you push-pull it back through an object like this, it'll actually cut out the material that's behind this in order to quickly create openings and other things like that. Well, for a long time, we've been trying to get this kind of functionality in Blender. And so we thought that we had it back when the Extrude Manifold tool was added, right? So let's say I had a surface like this one, for example, and let's say I wanted to create like a simple door shape. So something like this. So what the Extrude Manifold tool was supposed to do is it was supposed to allow us to push-pull faces back, and you can find that by going over inside of Edit mode, going to Extrude Manifold. The idea was that you would be able to push-pull back like this in order to remove material, and it works in a sense. So for example, I can use this to push-pull this surface back so that it's recessed inside of this object, but there's no real tool that allows you to dissolve this back face right here. So the hope was that we would be able to actually do that, but it never really works reliably. It does create some other issues as well. So when we use the Extrude Manifold tool, sometimes, and not always, but sometimes it'll leave a bunch of faces along the outside, even if you have the dissolve orthogonal edges selected. So it's a little bit of a limited tool that can be a little bit frustrating to use. However, with this new add-on, this functionality is greatly improved. So this add-on is called PunchIt, and it's from Machine. So the same developer that brought us like Decal Machine and Machine Tools, other things like that. And basically what it does is it gives us a manifold extrusion tool that actually is more reliable and actually works a little bit better than the one that's actually built into Blender. So I will link to this add-on in the notes down below. It is a $10 add-on, but if you do download that and install it, it's going to look something like this. So you're going to want to make sure that you go into your file preferences and you want to make sure that you've installed it in your add-ons. So you just want to make sure that PunchIt has been enabled, like this. So install it and then enable PunchIt. And then from there, what that's going to do is it's going to give you the ability to punch openings using surfaces like this in Blender. So let's say, for example, that, and I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did with the Extrude Manifold tool. And we'll actually split this object a little bit different. But basically the way that it works is you tab into edit mode like this. All right, and so if we were to select this surface and run PunchIt instead of the Extrude Manifold function, notice that what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to move our mouse in order to create a distance from which we want to punch or push-pull something. So if I click in here, right, and then left click, notice what that does is that actually cuts an opening inside of your surface. So you're not dealing with any of those leftover edges or anything like that. It literally just comes in here and it works, and it actually cuts the opening in your surface like this. If you've ever used the push-pull tool in SketchUp, you know how helpful it can be to be able to quickly create openings like this. So just for this functionality to work alone is a massive development in my mind, but it's going to work for other things too. So let's say, for example, that I was to simply knife cut the surface like this. So I'm just going to create a cut in here, realizing that this isn't very good topology, but for this example it ought to work fine. So we're just going to run PunchIt, and again, if I click, that's going to actually punch an opening in here. And you want to make sure to left click again in order to finalize that. And so there are some other functions in here to be aware of. So for example, let's say that we had a curved surface like this. So if I was to tab in edit mode, let's say that I wanted to extrude these inward, right? So if I was to try to do this with the Extrude Manifold tool, it's just not really going to work very well, right? Like even if you check the dissolve orthogonal edges, it just doesn't really do what it's supposed to do. However, if we try to do the same thing with PunchIt enabled like this, notice what this is going to allow us to do is this is going to allow us to set a distance right here. So I'm just going to set this one right here. Now one thing you're going to notice is when you first run this like this, it doesn't really work much better than the other tool. However, you can mess around with the push-pull functionality in here to get this to work. What I find easiest is I just left click to get out of this, and that's going to pop up the PunchIt window over here. And so what you're going to notice is you can come in here and you can adjust the push and pull values in here in order to make this work. So for this one, right, I'm cranking that push value up and I'm cranking the pull value down. And then once I do that, what this is going to do is this is actually going to give me a good result where I was able to remove this geometry right here. Now notice that there's also functions in here to adjust the direction that this is going. So for example, you can set this so that it's averaged. You can also set this where this is going to go along the vertex normals, which is going to give you a little bit better result in here. Notice how I do have to do a little bit more adjustment in here in order to get that to show up properly, but we are able to actually remove that material along this edge right here. And so if I was to select these surfaces and use the Extrude Manifold tool, notice how I can push-pull this backwards, but it just kind of push-pulls through the surface right here, which isn't really what we want. However, if we were to do the same thing with PunchIt, so I'm just going to click, move my mouse right here, and that's going to allow me to actually push-pull this opening in this surface. And again, notice how there's things you can tap on the keyboard in order to kind of adjust this, but I'm just going to hit the left arrow key, and again, we're just going to do this. We can adjust the direction that it goes based on the normals right here. You can also use the amount. So like for example, if you don't want this to cut an opening in here, you can adjust the amount so this is going a certain depth inside of your object as well. And so one thing you do need to be aware of is note that this only works on manifold solids. So for example, like right now, if I was to select this surface and use PunchIt, you can use this in order to punch an opening through here really quickly, no problem. However, if we were to come in here and let's say that we were to select this edge and extrude a face off of the edge, well now, remember this is no longer a manifold solid, right? Because it's got something with no thickness that isn't closed in. Well now if we try to run this tool, you're just gonna get a little bit of an error message. So notice how it tells us we need to fix this because our mesh is non-manifold. So, and again, I mean, it's really easy to fix in this situation, though sometimes it's not. But if we were to dissolve all these edges in here and then run it, so just do this right here, notice how it's going to work just fine. So just be aware that this means that your model is going to need to be an actual manifold solid for this to work. So in addition, there is a documentation in here. It's a fairly simple add-on, but there's still some very valuable information, especially in the using PunchIt video that's at the bottom of the intro page right here. But I will link to all of this in the notes down below. So personally, I'm really excited about this, but I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this add-on? Is it something that you think would help you with your modeling? I just love having that conversation with you guys. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.